Hey, Kayla. Thank you. Keith. Well, good morning, everyone. We've opened up the webinar. As people are joining us, we're just going to give it another minute or so. Thank you so much for joining us. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. If you could just make sure that you have your audio muted. We pretty much are able to mute all of you, but just in case, if you could do that. We do have a Q&A section as a portion of this program. So if you have questions for a specific legislator, please put that in the Q&A feature on your Zoom. If you're struggling or having some issues with the technology, please email Heather Prosky or put it in the chat, and she and Dan Fobb will be monitoring that. So thank you so much for joining us. We've got a great program. Just a wonderful group of panelists with us today. I'm just so excited to hear from our newly electeds in Dakota County. Grab your coffee, your bagel, your donut. I promise the next time when we can do these meetings in person, I'm going to buy all of you guys breakfast. Breakfast is on the chamber because we'll have reason to celebrate. All right, so I think we're going to get started, Heather. Heather Prosky is our Director of Events and Member Experience. She has just stepped in the role about a week ago, and she's just hit the ground running. And thank you so much, Heather, for all your work in making this program happen this morning. Just another minute and we will get started here. Okay, Heather, you can we can move forward and take the slide down, and then we can get the program started. Great. All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Dakota County Regional Chamber of Commerce Public Affairs webinar. My name is Maureen Scallon-Fahler, and I am the president of the Chamber of Commerce. And I'd like to welcome all of you this morning on this beautiful winter invigorating day in Dakota County. And I do have a line, and I can say it today because I couldn't say it yesterday. It's always sunny in Dakota County. It's a Chamber of Commerce day. So that's my line, and I'm sticking to it. But before we get started, I want to acknowledge our sponsors for today's program. We have three steadfast organizations that support our public affairs webinar. Charter Communications and Flint Hill Resources are our presenting sponsor for the public affairs series, and Velocity Public Affairs is our program sponsor throughout the series. So Charter Communications is America's fastest growing TV internet voice company. Their commitment to customers and exceeding their expectations is the bedrock of the Charter's business strategy and its philosophy that guides their employees. Flint Hill Resources is an industry leader in the refining chemicals, biofuels, and ingredients. Flint Hill Resources directly and indirectly supports more than 4,000 Minnesota jobs and has invested nearly $1.7 million on upgrades and improvements to all of its Minnesota facilities since 2010. With almost 1,000 full-time employees, the Flint Hill Resources Pine Bend Refinery is one of the largest employers in Dakota County. Velocity Public Affairs is a full-service public affairs company that provides experienced leadership with marketing, leading proprietary technology to help clients strategically address and manage public affairs challenges and opportunities. And these companies' commitment and involvement are evident of the value that they place on being engaged with the Dakota County Regional Chamber of Commerce. Again, for all of those who have just recently come on board, if you have questions for our legislators, please put them in the Q&A section, because we do have a portion and we'll be monitoring that as well. Before I introduce our speakers, I just want to say a couple words, because you know me, I always like to have a few words. I want to first welcome our newly elected legislators to Dakota County Regional Chamber of Commerce. I know I've had the opportunity to meet some of you during your campaigns, and on behalf of the Chamber, we welcome you to the Dakota County Regional Chamber of Commerce. We feel we are a partner with all of you to ensure that businesses can continue to thrive and be successful. So we are here to help you and support you. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda Dewar, who is chair of our Chamber's Public Affairs Committee, but also serves on the Chamber's Board of Directors. So Amanda, it is all yours.
All right, thank you, Maureen, and thank you all for being here. My name is Amanda Dewar. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for Charter Communications in Minnesota. I'm really excited about this program because with this kind of strange and hybrid legislative session, I haven't had the opportunity to meet all of you yet. So I'm sure many people watching today are in the same boat. So to kick it off, I'm just going to go through and introduce everyone. We've got Senator Zach Duckworth from District 58, Senator Lindsay Port from District 56. We've got Representative Caleb Berg from District 56B, Representative Keith Franke from District 54A, and Representative Liz Ryer from District 51B. And what we're going to do first is have each of you take a couple minutes to introduce yourselves and explain why you ran for the state legislature and what your priorities are for this upcoming year. And then I will ask some questions that are focused on some of the hot topics that you'll be facing in the legislature this year. The Public Affairs Committee has come up with a list of questions to start us out, but like Maureen said, if anyone else has questions, send them through the Q&A or the chat. And also, like Maureen mentioned, to keep things moving, we'll probably only have one or two legislators answer a specific question so we can cover more topics and get more perspective. So to kick things off, maybe I will turn it over to Senator Duckworth to do your introduction first.
Well, first in the chute, no pressure. Thanks, Amanda. I feel like we had a Zoom meeting earlier this week, right? Such is the world today. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being on. It's a pleasure to spend this morning with you, and thanks to the Chamber for putting this event on. I'll be very brief so that we can spend more time on questions. My name's Zach Duckworth. As mentioned, I'm the state senator from District 58, which is Lakeville, Farmington, and much of southern Dakota County. Includes many townships and some rural areas to the south. I'm fortunate to be on the committees of education, veterans, and housing. And my priorities this legislative session are really honed in on kids in school, businesses, finding a way to allow them to continue to operate and open safely, and then also doing what we can to keep the tax burden as minimal as possible on Minnesotans and businesses as we try to find our way through this challenging time. And obviously, the state finding a successful way and a path through this pandemic and helping folks get vaccinated and caring for their vulnerable and those with underlying conditions is a top priority as well. So that's me in a nutshell. I guess one interesting thing to know about me is I am a small business owner. I have a couple of businesses. Some of them are located in Dakota County. Others are in other parts of the state as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you. All right. Senator Port, you can go next.
Thanks, Amanda. Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's nice to be with you today. I am Lindsay Port. I am the state senator from District 56, which is Burnsville, Savage, and the northwest corner of Lakeville. I'm really happy to be here with you to talk, through what's happening in your lives, because really that's why I'm at the legislature. I think one of the reasons that I ran was because it's really important to me that we have accountable, transparent, accessible legislators. And I know this is a challenging year for that sort of thing, but it's really great that the chamber is putting on events like this that help us connect. And also, please always reach out to my office. My door is always open, even if it's just virtually right now. I'm a mom of 2 young kids. I've got a 7-year-old now and a 9-year-old. And so we are actually, today's our very last day of virtual learning, hopefully. My 9-year-old will go back on Monday, and that will be both of them back in school. So, we've had to sort of shift our lives around just like most of our neighbors have. And I think really what our focus is getting everyone safely through this pandemic, and then building back an economy, schools, and just community that really works for us all. I'm really pleased to be here with you and excited to hear what you have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Representative Burke.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone who's spending this morning with us. My name is Kayla Berg, and I am the representative for 56B, which is Burnsville and the northwest corner of Lakeville. And I'm a mom to 2 amazing young men, 18 and 20. I'm also a flight attendant, an independent consultant, a nonprofit director. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of things in my life centered around the issues that I care about. I ran because I didn't see a lot of people like me in the legislature, single mom, no college degree, doesn't travel in circles with wealthy friends. But I thought it was time for the voices of somebody that lives the issues that we're talking about. Until I was elected, I didn't have health care in a global pandemic because I didn't qualify for it with my employer. I advocated for one of my children through a woefully underfunded and broken education system. And so some of those things were what propelled me to run to represent what I thought were the voices of regular people in my district. And it is such a pleasure and honor to serve them. I'm on the Education Policy Committee, Capital Investment, Local Government, and Labor, Veterans, Military Affairs, Financial and Policy Committee. And some of my priorities are making sure that as our kids go back to school, that the teachers and the children do it safely and with the tools for the long-term success. I want to make sure that every Minnesotan has access to reliable healthcare, especially considering what we're going through right now. It's more important than ever. And then I want to make sure that we are doing all of these things through the lens of justice with the eye towards economic, racial, and environmental justice. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Representative Ryer.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm Liz Ryer. I represent House District 51B, the east side of Eagan, and I was looking at the list of people who are on. Happy to see so many familiar faces and names, and happy to be here to introduce myself in dialogue with those of you I haven't met yet. So I've lived in Eagan for about 30 years. I'm a business person by background. I've worked in mostly large companies, 12 years at Blue Cross, have my own independent consulting company as well that I've been operating for many years, former columnist for the Star Tribune, writing a business column, helping people find ways to address the issues that they're facing in the business environment. So coming into this role, I'm bringing both the perspective of the community and understanding the needs of business and the pressures that businesses face now more than ever during COVID. I think it's important to note, though, that I didn't decide to run until May of last year. So we were in full-fledged pandemic at that point. So I came in knowing that we were going to be looking at these challenges, looking at how do we keep people safe? How do we keep roofs over people's heads? How do we keep businesses alive? And then how do we come out of this with the opportunity to address the crises of climate change and of structural racism and social inequity? Because to me, when we have a situation where there are so many pressures, it's a time of great opportunity and a time to think creatively and innovatively about how do we take the pieces, how do we take the policies, how do we take the needs and combine them in new ways. And I am impressed in the legislature with the creativity and intelligence of the people around me. I'm on the housing, I'm on the preventing homelessness, healthcare, and capital investment committees. And so it's a rich territory to be able to go in and help drive action and help pull people together. So thank you. I look forward to our discussion.
Great, thank you. All right, and Representative Franke.
Thank you, Amanda. Good morning, everybody. Keith Franke, District 54A. I just have a little bit of Dakota County over there in South St. Paul. The rest of my district is across the Mississippi River. It is all of Newport, St. Paul Park, Cottage Grove, Great Cloud Island Township. And not all of Cottage Grove, just part of it. I guess, why did I run again? With everything that I've seen going on, this is my second term non-consecutive. So there was a 2-year gap. And between when I served before and now, there's a big difference on how we treated each other. And I just needed to throw my hat back in the ring to get back up there, to bring a little bit of common sense and help evolve a discussion that doesn't point fingers. One of my passions is addiction and helping people with mental health issues. And I was happy when I was appointed the GOP lead on the Behavioral Health Committee. I'm also on the Workforce Development Committee and the Capital Investment Committee. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, I also own a small restaurant and a small bar. So I've become the unofficial liaison for a lot of my brothers and sisters up there at the Capitol to help deal with these issues for their small businesses. So I find myself answering a lot of questions, referring people, because in the beginning of this pandemic, because of the businesses I'm in, I was probably one of the few people that actually sat down and read the entire CARES Act, because not only did I have time on my hands, I was scared and I had a lot of fear about not only are we keeping people safe, are we, doing this right, but how am I going to be able to save my businesses? How am I going to be able to continue to provide food and keep my employees safe and help them to provide for their families? So that's what I do in my free time, is like as soon as I'm done here, I leave and I go back to work at my business for another 10 to 11 hours, because that's where we're at today. We are struggling in my industry. So that has become another one of my focuses. So I'm just happy to be here. My door is always open and I'm an open book. So always feel free to reach out if anybody has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think it would make sense for my first question. I'll direct it to Representative Franke, just with your small business experience. It was kind of a good segue into this, but so many small businesses in Dakota County received Paycheck Protection Program loans from the federal government to help keep afloat and provide employees with paychecks during the pandemic. Do you support Minnesota conforming to the federal tax forgiveness on these PPP loans? This is a top priority of many chambers across the state, but it wasn't included in the governor's budget recommendations. So just curious your thought on that issue.
Of course I support tax conformity on all of these grants. You know, that's the business side of me. That's the personal side of me. Like, you know, how am I going to make this? There's been so many different grants, the PPPs, the, you know, the little assistance programs some cities have done. I mean, all of this is so in such an entanglement of a web. And we also can't then, it becomes frustrating because for one, you're trying to do the right thing and you close your business to keep people safe. And on the other, the things that are given to you, then you find out that the taxation is coming back, but actually that money was spent just to keep the doors open and keep food on the tables for your employees. So I think we need to do something. We need to do it right. You know, speaking from an industry side of it, from a business person side of it, of course, speaking from a representative side of it, more of a fiscal conservative, it's like, show me the numbers and how can we do this? The feds have done it. Minnesota's, we can't print money in Minnesota like the federal government can. So we need to figure it out and get it done right. So I think moving forward, it's going to be a heck of a discussion, and I would like to see it happen for everybody in the state of Minnesota, because otherwise that tax impact that it could have at the end, because of all the things all of us small business owners had to do to stay alive, could be the detriment that is so large that's going to drive us back out of business. And I just don't want to see that happen.
Right, right. Thank you. And maybe to get a bipartisan perspective on this, how about you, Representative Berg? How do you feel about the PPP loan forgiveness?
Thank you for the question. Little known fact, when the whole idea of the PPP was out there, the flight attendant union was actually leading on the charge to get it reinstated after it ran out, to make sure that employees and their families could make it through this sort of unprecedented time that we didn't ask for and that we're just trying to navigate through the best we can. The impact on small businesses has been one of the more prolific issues that we see publicly, and it's heartbreaking hearing the stories of people that have put everything that they have into their business, many of them serving their community because they love their community and want to offer them a service. And it's hard because we want to keep people safe. We have the science that says, you know, if we just all sort of hunker down and social distance and not gather in large groups, right, that we have the chance to open up quickly and safely and successfully for the long term. So in terms of the tax on this sort of relief that we have for small businesses, it's a really hard issue because of course we want to give small businesses the chance to thrive post-COVID. But at the same time, you know, money isn't just like out there growing on trees, as the old saying is. And so on the back end, there's going to have to be something that keeps the economy going. I will full on admit I'm not on the tax committee for a reason, because it is not my forte. But I certainly hope that collectively, as Liz said, with all of the talent and all the intelligence that we have in the legislature right now, that we can come up with a solution together.
I see Senator Port's hand up. Is that you wanting to comment on this one?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment on it. You know, I think like when we think about taxes, thinking about the way taxes are levied on our businesses, on our families, is incredibly complicated. And that doesn't help our communities. The more places that we can simplify tax code, and conforming with federal tax code in this case, helps our businesses to be able to plan for things. And you know, at this point with something like the PPP loans, our mom and pop businesses, our Main Street businesses, they used these to pay employees. They used them to keep folks employed, to keep paying you know, our neighbors who needed the money while they were staying home. I think tax conformity on this makes a ton of sense, because if you're thinking about the giant corporations that got this money as well, they have 19 different loopholes that they're going to be able to use to not pay the equivalent in taxes. The way we need to look at this is what is helping our small businesses on Main Street. And in this case, tax conformity makes sense. Do we need to have a more progressive tax code, which the governor laid out in his budget? Absolutely. But in this case, it makes complete sense that we should be helping small businesses in this case.
Wow, we got a lot of hands up now. I was going to shift to another question about taxes. Is that okay? Okay, I'll just to get more perspective. But I was gonna, and you can probably loop in your answer here with the next one because it's definitely related. So Minnesota's economic outlook is improving with projected deficits for the next biennium shrinking in each forecast. Since we're no longer facing a major budget shortfall and businesses have been hit hard by the pandemic, we support the governor's proposed business tax increases like the corporate income tax, capital gains, excise tax, etc. And I'll go to you, Senator Duckworth, since your hand was up, and you can probably merge the two answers.
We'll merge, but I'll be fast. And the reason why I wanted to weigh in on PPP is it's one of the topics right now that many constituents are reaching out and asking for specifically. I'm sure all of us legislators have experienced that. Just to give people a very specific answer, first off, I fully support it. Senate File 263 is the bill that's been introduced specific to this. It's got a companion in the House. It's House File 501, and they're bipartisan bills. It's being introduced by a combination of independents and Republicans in the Senate. It's been introduced by 2 DFL members in the House. So hopefully we can move this forward, and we're under some time constraints when it comes to getting this to conform before we have to meet all of our tax deadlines. So it's a priority. We're working on it. For many reasons that Senator Port, Representative Frankie mentioned, it's an important thing that we need to do. And tying it back to your other question, Amanda, is that's why when we talk about supporting our small businesses because they're employing people and trying to earn a living and provide for their families, that's why I'm not supportive of increasing taxes on our small businesses. I think we can have a good, very constructive dialogue regarding the budget and how we're going to move forward. You mentioned that maybe the February forecast is going to look a little bit better, but it's still likely going to include a substantial deficit. And if times are tough right now for businesses and families, I don't view increasing their tax burden as a successful strategy to move forward. So I guess that's the long and short of how I would respond to that question. There are many things the state does right and does well. We're in a difficult period of time, and I want to focus on getting those businesses the support they need, getting our families the support they need to make it through this challenging time. I just don't think an increase on taxes is going to help us with that.
Great, thank you. And how about you, Representative Reyer? Do you have thoughts on the governor's proposed tax budget in terms of the increases that he's proposing on businesses?
I do, and thank you for that. First, I'm just going to cap off the PPP question by saying that I think that the situation we're in falls in the category of unintended consequences. I am sure that no one intended for there to be this challenge of paying back money that was given to get through an emergency. And so cleanup, I think, is a really important thing. As far as the governor's tax bill, I do support it because when I've looked at the details, it's not most businesses, it's 99 point something % of businesses will see an increase. It's not probably most of the people in this room. It's certainly not my business, will not see an increase. And I think it's important that when we are looking at capability to pay, the benefits that organizations get, especially large companies get from government services programs and infrastructure, that there be a, I'm not even going to say a giving back, but a fair share commitment to being invested in turn. And so for those reasons, the needs for our schools, the needs of our roads and bridges and transit, all of the things that make our state a great place to do business and have the great employees that we have. I'm just looking for equity of investment in turn.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna use the opportunity to pivot to education since you brought up schools there. And I'm gonna direct this one to Senator Port and Senator Duckworth, because I know Senator Duckworth was previously a school board member, and Senator Port referenced her kids doing distance learning. So do you think Minnesota students' academic progress has been hindered by the lack of in-person learning? And what do you think the state needs to do to help get students get back on track here? I'll start with Senator Port.
Sure. Thanks for the question, Amanda. It's a good one and it's a hard one. The short answer is we don't know yet. We know that distance learning, virtual learning worked for some kids. We know it didn't work for other kids. That had a lot to do with access to quality internet, access to technology, whether their parents were home, to be able to help them. All sorts of things played into that. And also just some kids' brains work different than other kids' brains. And, individualized learning is important, and that access and connection to teachers is important. I think the one thing throughout this that we, all of us, bipartisan, nonpartisan, can agree on is that our teachers worked incredibly hard to do the very best they could for our students. And that is important. And I think it really, really helped to keep many of our students in really good learning positions. The other thing is literally everyone is going through this. It's not like it was, just in Minnesota that students had to face this pandemic. It's all across the country. It's all across the world. And so when we think about, did students fall behind based on what? Was this a challenging year for all of us? Absolutely. Do we need to make sure that we are providing mental health and trauma and food and housing resources to make sure that our students are in the best position possible to move forward? Yes. Am I concerned that they are not going to, meet a level on a standardized test that maybe we would normally be giving at this time of year? No, I'm not worried about that, because I think our teachers are connected to our students, especially as they're getting back into the classroom. Our students are going to be okay, because we are investing in them. And that is the key. Governor Walz's budget really invests in summer school, in opportunities that give kids chances to get back in. For my family, my 7-year-old now, one of the biggest challenges was she went to half a year of kindergarten. And then she's been in this crazy virtual world since. That period of time is so important for social development, for building friendships, for learning how to interact with each other. For us, that's been the biggest concern. She's learned how to read, she's learned how to do math, but that interpersonal skills is really something that's sort of irreplaceable. So we need continued investment. We need to make sure that we are offering opportunities, particularly to communities that often are underserved anyway. We need to do all of those things, but also we need to realize that we've been through a global pandemic and things are going to look different. And how can we build it back in a way that is more equitable and really solves the problems that our students need solved?
All right, thank you. I'll go to Senator Duckworth next, and then I'll call on you, Representative Berg. I see your hand is up.
So I could take the rest of our Zoom call and speak to this issue because it's so very important. I'm going to share a link to a tweet I read last night, and folks can take a peek at it. And it does a good job, I think, sharing perspectives of families all across the state and the real life struggle they are dealing with. As you mentioned, I was a member of the school board 30 days ago. The struggle is real. Hybrid is not the easy answer or solution we thought it might be. It's probably the most resource intensive, logistically complicated learning model we could embrace. I share many sentiments that Senator Port has, especially in regard to our teachers. I've seen them do amazing things. I've seen our superintendents and staffs of districts do incredible things that literally work all day and all night to find a way to best serve our students and our kids. But at the same time, I hear from kids and from families that they're not just struggling academically, they're struggling emotionally, they're struggling mentally, And it's having long lasting consequences, effects, and impacts on these kids. And it fires me up. I got a 2 and a 4-year-old. Actually, this month they'll both be 3 and 5. And we've got a whole slew, thousands of kids across the state that we need to find a way to return to the education they deserve, and to do it safely. I spent the better part of a morning in Farmington Elementary School this week to see for myself what's happening in our elementary classrooms. And I saw safety equipment being worn. I saw people taking precautions, and I heard giggles in the hallway. I saw kids learning. I saw kids interacting with each other, and I saw them doing it and accomplishing it safely. And that's, the CDC says we can do it. And I think that we, as a state and as fellow legislators, regardless of party, this should not be a partisan issue. How do we work together to find a path forward safely to get our kids in the classroom so they can continue to learn? Because it's crucial. And I think, and this is the last thing I'll say, I'll turn it back to you. My biggest fear right now, when I was on the school board, I thought to myself, okay, temporary issue. We've seen some decline in enrollment. That's alarming. However, if we get back to normal, we'll get enrollment right back up to where it was, and we'll keep moving forward. The longer this goes on, my biggest fear is we're going to do irreparable damage and harm to public trust in our public schools, and that some of that decreased enrollment when kids went and chose private school options or they chose homeschool options, the longer this goes on, the bigger my fear is that those kids might not return to our public schools. And my biggest fear is when some of our local schools go for referendum for funds that they desperately need to keep serving our kids, that the public's going to say, hey, we weren't thrilled with this experience, so we're not gonna approve that referendum. That's a big fear of mine. So we got to find a way to support our families and our students and work with our teachers to do so.
Thank you. All right, I'll let you comment, Representative Berg, and then we'll switch to a new topic.
Okay, I'll just be really brief. I've seen throughout different points in this pandemic a quote that says, I hope we don't return to normal because normal wasn't working. And I think it's important when we talk about an issue like this with our kiddos that are going through so much mentally and emotionally, that we think about that quote and that we think about how we can prioritize equity in our education and how we can prioritize mental health and trauma issues, and really put into action wraparound services in our schools so that kids are fed and they have access to mental health and trauma resources. And we're taking care of issues in the home with families. We're providing them school counselors and social workers to talk to. This is an opportunity to take the pieces of education that wasn't working or that weren't working and be creative and innovative to meet the needs. And if we listen to our teachers, they are saying hybrid works. When they're back in school full time, they're in classes of 30 or more, and the safety precautions that we take are hard to maintain. In a hybrid situation, they have 10 to 12 kids in their classroom at a given time. They get to interact with the students get to interact with their teachers and each other. Listen to our teachers because they are seeing and feeling what we actually need to do. And as legislators, that's a really good resource. Our teachers are focused on rebuilding the sort of emotional piece of what's happening to our kids during this pandemic, address the trauma and their emotional well-being versus standardized tests. We need to prioritize what our kids are going through. They'll be okay, as Lindsay said. Their learning is not as far behind as we think, but their emotional well-being may be. So this is a hard thing for all of us to address, and it is an absolute bipartisan issue. And I hope we all work together to make sure our kids are taken care of.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now I'll direct this next one to Representative Franke and Representative Reyer. Several employer mandates have recently been proposed, including the governor has a budget recommendation to create a state-run paid family and medical leave program, which would be funded by 0.6% employee or payroll tax. And then there's also been legislation requiring employers to provide employees up to 48 hours of safe and sick time. Do you support these mandates on businesses as they're trying to recover from the pandemic? And I'll first go to Representative Frank.
Thank you, Amanda. You know, we just went through the governor's proposed government-run system in workforce a little bit, just briefly with a deed overview presentation. And honestly, as a small business owner, my initial thing is like, really, you're going to require me once again to, you know, foot the bill for somebody else's idea. But then the realistic side of me and the caring side of me is like, if I can provide this for my employees at a low cost or without having to set up some type of a system to where it costs me even more. I guess I haven't seen the proposals, I haven't read them, but I do know that the 0.6%, because I asked Commissioner Grove, turns out to be, I think he said like 30 cents on every $100 or something like that. And I guess to be able to provide that program to my employees, this is just my own personal opinion. I'm not trying, you know, last thing I want to do is tell somebody else how to run their business. And last thing I really want to do is have government tell me how to run my business. But the side of me that, you know, cares about the people is like, that's not too bad. So I'm kind of intrigued and I'm willing to look into that a little more. Unfortunately, it grows government, and government seems to screw everything up when it sets up a system, i.e. MNLARS and other things like that. So I'm skeptical. I just read the tweet about Representative Olson's proposal, and I did not seem that thrilled about that, because almost seems like a double dip then. How many programs are we going to force on businesses, especially right now? Coming out of this, you know, maybe we need to slow roll some of our ambitions here. But I'm willing to look at that and look into it a little more. But so I think we have to be careful. Government is mandating things, but sometimes as a small business owner, I'm like, if I can get it done and still take care of my employees, then I'm willing to look at it. So I'm still a little up in the air.
Okay, Representative Ryer, and then I'm getting like the proverbial like hook around my neck that I have to go to a next topic after this. So I'm sorry, Senator Port and Representative Berg.
Well, then I'll thank you for giving me a chance to answer this one. Sorry, guys. For me, when I think about it, one of the things that I go back to is that the governor's budget is not a prescription, it is a moral document. And it's setting out priorities for what we should be caring about as a state. As Representative Franke said, we care as business owners and as people about the well-being of our employees and our neighbors. And so these types of programs are valuable. How we get there is another matter. And, you know, that's the subject of much debate between the parties and amongst within parties. I would say, though, that it's essential if we want to be competitive and we want to be the kind of state that we want to be, that we are looking at programs that benefit employees, the paid family medical leave. And there are lots of ways that legislation has set out to be able to fund that or get there through private or public means. 48-hour sick time doesn't just protect the employee, it protects, and we should see this in the pandemic more than ever, when employees are forced to go to work when they don't feel well because the survival of their family financially depends on it. I've been in those jobs. I had a long career in my 20s in restaurants and nursing homes, and, you know, working the underpaid and low benefit types of jobs that these things would help. So, you know, for me to come back to it, it's a social value. It's also a business competitive and humane value. So yeah, I do support having these types of programs. And then I'll close with saying, I'm just going to come back to my mantra of unintended consequences. I'm a project leader by profession, and so I know that it's really important to say, what are the risks in this approach? What are the risks in that approach? Have we talked to small business owners, large business owners? Have we talked to low-wage employees? Have we talked to people in nonprofits? And get all of the different, have we talked to people from all communities that will be affected, so that we are making really wise and informed decisions about how we do things. Let's agree on the goals and then be really conscientious and careful about how we do it.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to switch to another topic, which is transit, which is something that the Dakota County Regional Chamber has been very active on. Our members tell us that they need better transit service to get employees to work. And since COVID, some kinds of travel by transit have fallen and other kinds have been proven critical. So while the types of transit may change in the future, the need itself will not. And we are wondering if funding transit connections be a priority for you in the upcoming budget. And I'll go first to Senator Duckworth.
Well, transit is a great question right now as we all figure out what work is going to look like in the future. You know, I've been driving to and from St. Paul for quite a bit now, and I haven't really experienced the kind of traffic I normally would. And I don't mean to make light of the situation, but I think there's some truth to be said for us figuring out what traffic is going to be like moving forward, depending on what several businesses choose to do with their workforce. Are we going to see a lot more flexibility in schedules? Or are we going to see a lot more remote employees? And what's that impact going to have on traffic? But I'm also a realist, and I hate traffic with a passion. And so we do need to do what we can from a transit standpoint to help make it more available to folks, to help make it affordable to folks, and then also to relieve traffic and congestion for safety reasons on our interstates as well. So I live in Lakeville, so I'm selfishly in conversation regarding you know, portions of 35 and what work needs to be there. Constantly in conversation with several of our county commissioners regarding our county roads and what we need to do there, and then looking at, you know, other modes of transportation and how we can bring it, you know, potentially further south. You know, we've got transit in Burnsville and Apple Valley. And we get the question fairly regularly from folks that are further south in Dakota County about extending it even further their way, so they have the ability to use it for work and other means. So it's something I'm not opposed to working on and making the investment in. I think that is one of the jobs of government, is infrastructure. And if our citizens and constituents are asking us to invest in infrastructure so they can go about their lives and do what they need to do, that's something that we need to do. I think Dakota County has done a remarkable job in regard to transit. They continue to make it a priority, work hard on it for one of the largest counties in the state, for them to see it focus, for it to be such a focus for them. You know, I commend them for it, and I'm willing to work with them in partnership to continue to meet our transit needs.
Thank you. All right. And I know Senator Port needs to duck out. So I'll let you touch on transit if you like, and then you can, you know, any closing comments and goodbye to the crew.
That'd be great. Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, I do support investments in transit. And I think, you know, one of the things that we're learning even before this pandemic, is that where sort of the work hubs in our metro area look different now than they did even 10 years ago. They're really growing, you know, businesses out here in Dakota County that need workers to have access to them. And so looking at transit models and transit investments that have suburb to suburb connections that help workers move from the communities we live in to the places we need to work, which is no longer just downtown Minneapolis. And so, you know, making sure that we're making those investments, thinking about where our workers actually live, and then also providing housing for them that's close and affordable to the places that are growing. You know, we have great businesses growing and investing in our communities, in Lakeville, in Shakopee, all over the South Metro. And we need affordable housing for people to work at those places. And we also need transit options for them to get there. So I fully support transit, but I think we do need to be more creative and maybe investing in sort of the suburban transit, like Minnesota Valley Transit and things like that, that serve our suburban communities. Just one note about paid family leave. It's a moral, like Liz said, budget is a moral document, and we stand out across the world as not offering paid family leave. It is like us and Papua New Guinea, and that's it. So like, this is something we need to fix, and it is impossible for small businesses to fix this on their own. Thinking about paying an employee for 12 weeks while they take care of, bond with a new baby or take care of someone is a huge burden for a small business. And we can't keep up with large corporations on offering that benefit. But we know this system works. It's working in other states like Washington. We're working closely with them as we build our program. It's often sort of referred to as really similar to unemployment insurance. And it gives businesses the opportunity to offer that to our workers. But it really is it's a moral principle that we need to live up to. I appreciate your time. I'm sorry I have to run. I have now 8 minutes to get where I'm going, but thank you so much for having me. I look forward to many discussions. Please reach out to my office if you have individual questions. Have a great morning.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, Senator Port. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. Well, we'll do one final question, and I'll just like throw it out there, and whoever wants to answer it, we'll let this one go. Are you concerned that the administration is pursuing California Clean Car Program standards through rulemaking rather than allowing the legislature a say in this significant policy proposal?
What a question to leave us hanging on, Amanda. You saved a good one for the last. I'll take a stab at answering this question in principle. My philosophy is state government functions best. Our democracy functions best when the legislature, in partnership with the executive, is working to solve the problems that Minnesotans want us to address. So the short answer to your question is, regardless of who the governor is and whether they're a Democrat or a Republican, if there are things that need to work through the legislature, where folks are, all of us on this call who are elected officials are there to represent our constituents, voice their opinions and concerns. It's important that we utilize that process and not bypass it when we have the opportunity to include the legislature and thereby the voters in those conversations and that process. The situation we find ourselves in as it relates to emergency powers is definitely something that's not the norm. And there are certain warranted reasons for that. But I don't think those powers were initiated way back when to deal with the California car emission standards issue. That should probably be flowing through the legislature, where we can have a conversation and make a determination for the state of Minnesota.
All right. Looks like Representative Frankie has a comment.
Thank you, guys. I'm just going to answer this question briefly and then duck out. I have to get to work myself. So I just want to first start by saying thank you, everybody. Great discussion. Thanks for having me. I'm kind of on the same boat with Senator Duckworth as far as, as legislators, we need to be held accountable, not only with clean car standards or whatever it may be. Being reelected, one of the things that frustrated me about this whole process of the pandemic and the governor's emergency powers, it let so many people off the hook from actually having to take a vote on something and put themselves on the line. And I've heard it over and over again. And it's more in the back rooms or face-to-face with constituents where it's like, well, that was the governor. That was the governor, let's involve the legislature. I'm not a big fan of rulemaking, never have been. And we have seen just in this last week alone that the industry is changing. It is evolving, and the free market is trending the other way. Ford announced a significant, I don't even remember, it was $2 billion investment in electric cars starting, GM announced that they're, going to be completely or switching over to electric cars. So we're seeing that this is what people are asking for. The market is changing and companies are stepping up to the plate. So sometimes I think government needs to get out of the way of the free market and let it take care of itself. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy your day.
Thank you so much for being here. All right, well, I will turn it back over to Maureen now to close it out, but I just want to say, thank you to each of you for spending the morning with us, and thank you so much for your service to the state during this really challenging time when there's a lot of important decisions that have to be made. So, definitely consider the chamber a resource, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. I want to thank all the legislators for attending us. Liz, I know you had your hand up regarding the clean cars. If you want to put an answer or response in the chat, because we're going to keep this open for a few more minutes for my closing comments. So
Okay.
if you want to put something in, that's great. Thank you all for joining us this morning. And I want to thank our sponsors again for their continued support. So I just have to put a little 2 cents worth in. As you know, our chamber has invested heavily in transit and advancing transit for our employers and residents in Dakota County. And I appreciate your responses to that. Transit is going to look different by the time we get through the pandemic. So now is the time for us to be creative, to come up with different ways, more efficient ways to move people in and around Dakota County. And it has been stated that transit in suburban areas has not had as much of a hit as the core in Minneapolis and St. Paul. So the other thing is, it was a very disappointing situation over at Dakota County when the county board decided to exit the joint powers agreement and serve on the Minnesota Valley Transit Authority. I was very disappointed. Our chamber really encouraged them not to do that, because by not having a voice at the table and not being present, I think is going to have some significant issues. So I ask that the legislative delegation hold our county board to their commitments that they will not let transit drop off the earth. So I'm really looking at you to help me continue our work in transit. I'd like to wish everybody a great day. We've got Super Bowl this weekend. I'm not saying who I'm cheering for, but I think it's going to be an awesome game. Our next public affairs is scheduled on Friday, March 5th. March 5th. And I'm really pleased to announce that County Attorney for Dakota County, Jim Backstrom, will be joining us. He is retiring at the end of February. He has a long legacy of public service and advancing and working in the AG's office in Dakota County. So I think it will be a very interesting, enlightening conversation with the AG Backstrom. So everybody have a great day. Thank you very much. Zach and Liz, I know everybody had to hop off, but appreciate you hanging out. Have a great day. And again, thank you for your public service.